Bring in CNBC contributor Ed Lee from the New York Times and Tom Forte from D.A. Davidson. Very good afternoon to you both. Tom Forte, to you first. Sum it up for us. What's your take?
Yep. So for me, the most important data point was the expectation that sales in the June quarter are going to be better than expected. If you go back to the early days of the pandemic, recall that Amazon leaned into essentials. This had a negative impact on their sales. They weren't able to keep up with demand. Since then, they've added fulfillment centers. They've added headcount. They're much better prepared. I think that's going to position them for the June quarter, and that's why the June quarter revenue is going to be better than expected.
Yeah, so Ed, I mean, we were expecting very tough comps throughout the rest of the year, but we're seeing, whether it's Amazon or other big tech players, that they have seen structural shifts over the last year, not just temporary COVID shifts.
Right, and I think that should signal to the market, the marketplace, what's going on with, when we get out of pandemic or even in mid-pandemic, there is sort of a secular change. I think people are going to just continue to buy stuff on Amazon like they were during lockdown periods. Maybe not quite as much as in terms of volume as before, but it was sort of an introduction to, the service for a lot of people, and they found that they liked it, so that's going to continue. I was blown away by the advertising numbers. Well, that is now their fastest growing business. The other thing for me, and I counted this, Bezos mentions Prime Video 17 times in his letter. I think it's the most he's mentioned Prime Video, talking about all the sports rights they're getting, NFL, et cetera. I think just look out for more of that, I think, in the future. I think, there's going to be more investment in that space. 175 million people watching streaming video, which, again, was a surprising number. Netflix is at 207 million. So Amazon's very, very close behind.
His 10-year-old child, he calls it. Yeah, that is
yes,
Prime Video.
Exactly right.
So, Tom, AWS, where's the AWS versus Microsoft Azure battle going? Who's growing faster?
Well, so I still think, great question. I still see AWS as the market leader, and I think there's a potential in a rebounding economy that AWS outperforms in 2021. If you think about what Amazon did last year, they worked with customers in travel and leisure to help them scale back their AWS spend because of the pandemic. So in a reopening, I think there could be better than expected performance for cloud computing for Amazon this year, which would be great for profits for Amazon in 21.
And Ed, what about the outlook for advertising? I guess not a nascent business for them, but not as developed as some other parts, and clearly a very strong business for some of their rivals at the moment.
It is. It has been. And I think, I've done some channel checks with media buyers, and, they are now shifting more TV dollars directly towards digital. You saw that with Google and Facebook in their earnings reports in terms of blowout advertising numbers. I also think Amazon will benefit from this shift towards away from third-party cookies, right? So if you're a marketer, basically, if you're selling product, and you're selling it on Amazon, I mean, their advertising business is really just sort of effectively these co-op fees, right? So on Amazon, they know they have first-party data, they know the customer, and that's really what that ad dollar means. And so I think they'll benefit even more with the disappearance of this tracking, with the disappearance of this sort of third-party data that after what Apple's doing to its iOS and even on web browsers as well.
Tom, Bezos is obviously handing over the reins at a strong time for the business. Where's the investor community on this? Are they sort of cool with this transition? And do you expect any talk about it on the call?
Sure. So I think if, picking Andy Jassy, the head of AWS, the most important business within Amazon, retail also important, but to me, a sign that they're going to focus more on services in the future. Generally speaking, when I think services, I think higher margin that can enable it to maintain its multiple over time. So I think investors are more than comfortable with the transition.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.